trust me, cause then I know you like I know you. All this good loving I'ma owe you. No long talk, let me show you. Anywhere you go, you know I wrote you. Girl, you're local. Been a long time, let me choose. No other man can promote you. Cause if I'm rolling with you, fire in the venue. Who knows what we can do? There's no way we can lose. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Cause if I'm rolling with you, fire in the venue. Who knows what we can do? Amfundiseni umntana ukuthi azokhula apha emhleni naye amthandeni umntana amsizeni umntana ukuthi azokhula apha emhleni naye amsizeni umntana Mlekelele wanna love you, baby. No one makes me feel the way that you do. I just wanna love you now. Baby, all I've ever wanted is you. I just wanna love you, baby. No one makes me feel the way that you do. I just wanna love you now. Baby, all I've ever wanted is you. Don't know what you do to me, but you're the only one that's on my mind. I wanna be your everything, just waiting on you to give a sign. Now I hear the thunder, your love is like a hurricane, like a strike of lightning. Hit me in the pouring rain, it really makes me wonder why I can't get you off my brain. Feelings taking over. I just wanna love you, baby. No one makes me feel the way that you do. I just wanna love you now. Baby, all I've ever wanted is you. I just wanna love you, baby. No one makes me feel the way that you do. I just wanna love you now. Baby, all I've ever wanted is you. Oh, baby. Is you.
Goddamn girl, what it do? Saw you rolling in with the whole crew. Thick thighs, everybody want a piece of you. Not gonna lie, I'm not used to going in. Surely like to bang with the top down cruise. Goddamn girl, we can make a move. Should get another drink. Swim, yeah. Don't swim too deep, you might sink. Gotta get away from everything. But why is it so hard to find some good loving? I want you to know I want you, and I want to. We go bounce on the bounce, I know that I want you. If you want to, we go bounce on the bounce, baby. We can do this all night. I don't wanna have to get back in line. Just say that you're satisfied. Baby, take another hit and spend some time with me, babe. We can do this all night. I don't wanna have to get back in line. So baby, take another hit and spend some time. Got a hold on you, sensation. You sensation right now.
It's time for our third breakout session. A reminder, if you have any questions, remember to jump onto Slido, enter the code WIZARD, and we'll answer your questions at the end of the session. This session, Structuring Your Clients for Success in a Post-COVID World, will be presented by Damien, Greathead, Head of Accounting Advisor Group, Marketing at Intuit QuickBooks. Tish Bagwadine, Founder and Director of InFinance Solutions, and Trent Yesberg, Business, Property and Finance Specialist at Regional Business Services. Please welcome Damien, Tish, and Trent.
So funny, we have to wait for the music. Right, we good?
I hope so.
there?
I'm
Okay.
ready.
Ah!
So, oopsie. Oh, there you go.
There we go. Oh, no, not yet. Anyway, hello folks, how are you? My name's Damien Greathead and I'm with the advisor marketing team, and I'm excited to have present this session with Tish and Trent. the reason being, I went out to Tish and Trent and our TWN, which is our trainer rider network, and I said, can you help put training together? And they actually came back to me and said, yes, but we think there's another session that we can talk about. And so that's the real genesis of today's session, which I'm really excited by. So we have a very robust slide deck with just myself, Damien and Tish, and Damien and Tish, Trent and Tish. But what we might just do is let's just kick off with just some basic introductions, some general introductions. Tish, who are you in Finance Solutions? What do you do? And just a little bit about your personal and professional background.
Thanks, Damien. Well, who am I? I'm Tish, chartered accountant, former external auditor, so I used to like checking up on all the other accountants until I decided I was going to cross over. I spent about 15 years in the industry, 10 of those in auditing and another 3 or 4 being CFO advisory. At that stage, I noticed there was a gap in the market with small businesses, especially in the startup space, and I thought that, well, as accountants, maybe there's something better we can do for small businesses who are looking to grow. And that's how In Finance Solutions was really born. I wanted to give them a better service offering. So I started off with a CFO advisory focus, but then very quickly realized that clients kind of wanted everything in one place. So now we offer everything from bookkeeping, taxation, all the way up to CFO advisory.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tish. Trent, a little bit about yourself and your background in the firm.
So, Trent Jesberg, Regional Business Services. We're based out of Townsville. We've got a team of 8. Actually started off as my father's business originally. He was in the banks, left there in the year 2000 when GST kicked off, and he established a network basically across all of North Queensland, based from Townsville back at the time when CDs were actually required to be put into the snail mail so that they could transfer their files backwards and forwards and all the sort of fun things that would have been associated with that there. My background, I started off Bachelor of Commerce, went through Westpac, went through the ranks there, and stepped out to come and work with my father. And this was at the time when things were going to the cloud. So what we saw was the opportunity there as to how we were doing things already, how people were doing things now versus how we could be doing things, especially in a regional location for ourselves. So we've grown to a team of 8 now. We've got bookkeepers. We only do bookkeeping. Like we like to work collaboratively with all of the accountants that we work with. But we also provide mortgage broking services, so commercial finance, and we've also got a real estate component to what we do too. So there's property sales, business sales and things like that we get involved in now too. So we've expanded over the little while, but our bread and butter is our bookkeeping clients where we've got really strong relationships across them with them.
Thank you, Trent. And the genesis of today's session was really what's happening for our business clients in a post-COVID world, and what should we be talking to them about post-COVID? Because I think, for the most part, my feeling is that life has changed. What's important to me has fundamentally changed in the last couple of years. And Tish, if I could hand over to you and just get your insights on what's happening in your clients' businesses. What's happening in the business owners in this it's not really post-COVID world, but now, and how has that evolved over the last couple of years?
I think the interesting thing that I noted is there's a need for clients who actually want to understand more about their financials. They went through this process during COVID where there was JobKeeper, government grants, and they didn't have that on-demand access to their information, and some of them didn't understand their financial information that was coming through. So when you said, oh, but you're not eligible for grant XYZ, they were a bit confused, like, what do you mean? So what came through really strongly on that part is the need to actually coach people on financial literacy, help them to actually understand what their business is doing, what are their numbers actually telling them. So now when clients come to me, the first thing that we're talking about is, well, we're in this phase now of a semi-post-COVID world. We don't really know if we're over with it yet. But now let's talk about your goals. Let's get you to understand your business. And coupled with that, I'm actually starting to bring in coaching on the accounting software. So we sit and we have a 2-hour session. And it's fine. You don't have to want to be the bookkeeper or accountant. But I think at a minimum level, as a business owner, you should understand how to use your accounting software in a basic level. And
did you, your own business in Finance Solutions, what happened? Did you lose clients? Was it a boom time for you? How did the pandemic affect your client base? because you were in Melbourne, so
Yeah.
longest lockdowns. How was your business impacted by COVID?
Initially, it was a massive adverse impact, and that's because I do quite a bit of the hospitality and entertainment clients in Melbourne. So in March, when everything shut down, immediately you go around with your clients, you help them stand down their staff, and at the end of it, they stand down the accountant. And you do have your internal crisis of going like, oh gosh, I started this business now. I don't have any money that's going to come through the door, but you've got to keep this really calm exterior, because if you freak out, your client's going to freak out. But then I saw it flip very quickly, with the government response was really, really rapid, where the cash flow boost came out. They very quickly realized, oh, that's not going to be enough. They more than doubled that. Then JobKeeper came out, then grants came out. And everybody started, and everything linked back to tax. Everyone started going, oh, is my financials up to date? I need tax returns. And I think that was a pivotal moment for clients, because they either found out how great their accountant or bookkeeper was, or how bad their accountant or bookkeeper was. And it caused a shift in the market, where I went from, oh, I just lost a lot of business in 3 days, but now I've tripled that in the next week. For me personally, it saw me pivot my business. Got to a point where resources were scarce in Melbourne, and I just had way more work than what I could deal with. So the first thing I did was look for technology that I could adopt to make it easier and faster. But the next thing I thought of, well, I always had this aspiration to start an offshore office in South Africa, because that is my background. And I thought, well, there's no time like the present. So I woke up one night and put a call out to South Africa, and I said, hey, bookkeepers and accountants, if you want to work with someone in Australia, let's see what happens. And a few people reached out to me, and it actually saw me pivot my own offshore office that I now run alongside the Australian business.
Wow. Trent, you're from Queensland, Townsville. I won't say opposite end of the spectrum, but sort of from a lockdown standpoint and an agricultural client base. How did the pandemic impact your clients and your business?
So I don't want to say dramatically different, but we definitely had a very fortunate situation evolve in Queensland, especially regionally, where we weren't impacted by the harsh lockdowns and the time involved and things like that. We were super fortunate. For our business, it's actually been two of the strongest years that we've had. We were in a position where we were able to provide clients with real-time information. We still had grants available, naturally, Cash Flow Boost, JobKeeper, all of those ones. And just having QuickBooks there with KeyPay just made it seamless. For 90% of our clients are already on QuickBooks Online and KeyPay. So for us, it was actually, we were able to spring into action instantly, and we didn't have a burden of any sort of backlog of work to get completed. So we were really fortunate in that space. When the grants came out, it really changed the conversations that we were having with our clients, as opposed to just being a little bit more compliance driven around, all right, we need to get this completed for this time. Would you like to sit down and have a discussion around your profit and loss, things like that? There was never really that much of a buy-in of it. From the way that we were positioning it, we were quite reactionary, and we weren't in control of the conversation. We were offering it, but it wasn't necessarily, there wasn't a large uptake in it. Whereas actually during COVID, during the situation, we were actually able to make those offers to the clients, and then they were very grateful to sit down and talk through and see what was available to them in the way of grants, see how their business was travelling, and also just anything that was there that was appropriate for them, they were able to take advantage of it.
On an aside, and this question's not actually in our pre-planning, which was done this morning. Were you ever worried about getting paid for the work that you were doing during COVID? Because that was in my mind, and I was always worried about accountants and bookkeepers doing this enormous amount of work to help them to help their business clients stay afloat. But I wasn't sure if they were necessarily getting paid for that work, or if there was the cash flow to pay for it.
I don't feel like we necessarily increased our overall business revenue based on that extra work that we were doing there. So I think we actually undersold what we were doing.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is that at the essence of what we are as bookkeepers and accountants is that we want to enable businesses to perform. I think fundamentally we do our piece, the pieces of the puzzle that we all fit within. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we're wanting our clients to excel. So when everyone's in a hard time, we kind of see ourselves in a similar boat for it. But we're a combination of fixed fee and bill by time. So fixed fee, we wore that as part of, it's just a general business decision. We thought, well, if we can see through clients during this potentially tough time now, then ideally they'll value that moving forward. But we also, when things came through like grants and other things that were available, that's when they actually came to us first. Well, we went to them first to say, this is what's out there, and they didn't even question. They just said, all right, how do we do this? Let's go. We naturally got that work there to do, and there was never a question around price at that point.
And Tish, restaurants, hospitality?
I will be honest, a lot of clients could not afford my fees, but I did not get in. It's ironic, but I didn't get into the business for the money. I got into it for the people. And I think that was just really the time that you just needed to show up, because everybody was going through something. And if you kind of abandoned them at that pivotal moment, firstly, A, what does it say about you as a person? But B, I mean, you sell yourself as this accountant that I'm going to be your advisor, you can trust me, and I'm going to help you grow your business and realize your goals. But you know what? That was the time you needed to show up. So realistically, there were quite a few clients in the entertainment industry who just couldn't afford my fees, and I wrote it off. And I worked with a few businesses pro bono during that time to actually pivot their businesses. One of the businesses, we've pivoted them into a gin-based company, which is doing exceptionally well. They're now being stocked in Dan Murphy's. And I offered that free to them because that was me helping them realize their aspiration.
And did sort of your specialisation in restaurants and entertainment, has that evolved, or just as a result of helping clients pivot?
I'm going to say maybe no. Yeah. And the reason for that is my background is actually in external audit and more general audit. And so what that actually means is, as an auditor, you need to go into any industry, any business, and have the technical skill to then understand that business and the accounting in a very short space of time. And because I spent 10 years in that industry, I find that I don't keep myself industry specific. I do a lot of hospitality and entertainment, but I spread myself out into tech as well. And I think it's just that audit background that I'm leaning on, that you just need to have that skill to go in and understand and work it out very quickly. And it's part of the challenge that I enjoy, to be honest.
And the session title is called Structuring for Success. And what are you seeing, or what's happening in your client base that is causing you to be, oh, hang on, I don't think our clients are in the right business structure, or what has changed that we need to have this conversation about business structure? Do you want to go first, Tish?
Well, as an ordinary course, when a new client comes through to meet me, the first question I ask them is, what are their goals? And the second question I ask them is, what structure are you currently running your business through? What I'm finding now is a lot of the existing clients are people coming to me and saying, I need to look at my structure, I need to understand how I'm trading, and what are those implications to us? Because one of the things that COVID actually exposed businesses to was a level of risk. There was a lot of liquidity risk because of lack of cash flow. And so if you were a sole trader, you were then putting all your personal assets at risk. And if you were sitting in a company structure, a trust structure, you were then working with different levels of risk. So now I feel that clients are actually taking the initiative to come to me and say, this is my trading structure. I think it might not be the best for my long-term aspirations. Can we have that conversation? And then coupled to that, I find a lot of people are looking at restructuring their existing businesses, either bringing in partners to de-escalate some of their risk, or looking to purchase other businesses because now they want to go and diversify across the industry. So I feel in the Melbourne landscape, everybody's looking at how can I de-escalate my business risk but still enjoy or do what I enjoy doing, and then let's have that conversation about business structure.
And what about you, Trent? How are you seeing, what are the questions coming in from your clients, or is it more we're going out to our clients to talk about the structuring them for success?
So it's been a combination. We've had the clients that we worked with closely during the pandemic, we were having those conversations then about what direction they wanted to go with the business. And it really was a sort of crystallizing moment for a lot of people. They either decided that this is not what I want to be doing, so we need to make drastic changes, or they decided, you know what, if this is the worst of the situation, then let's use it as the opportunity to go and make the drastic changes that we need to do so we can get to be where we want to be. So we had a combination in there, and the questions that were really being raised were, it was a lot around the risks, sort of navigating those risks and those thought processes around it, but also really it's I think a lot of it is just sharing ideas and having a little bit of validation in talking with it with your advisors in that space, and giving that comfort that, yeah, that makes sense, or just think about these sort of things that might be applicable, whatever that may be, depending on the industry or the business. And then it's just a conversation that goes from there, and working in with the accountants and what decisions need to be made at those levels.
What about succession? Have clients thinking, again, the last couple of years have been incredibly difficult, and you know what? There's only so many hours in the day. I want to slow down, and I need to have a plan of attack for that. I may not necessarily want to slow down tomorrow, but I need to think about this and put a plan in place rather than be sort of ad hoc reactive. Is succession planning something that you're seeing? You're getting more questions about this from your clients?
I actually am, yes, and it's not just driven by the risk or I want to retire early. It's actually just driven by the reality that we faced in COVID, which was a high number of deaths that came out from the pandemic. And so people are going, well, I'm the sole director on this company. I now need to have a plan in place if something actually happens to me, or if I'm in hospital and I can't make that critical decision, what's going to happen to my business? So a lot of people are putting that in place, speaking to their lawyers, speaking to their accountants. Let's work out who's going to be that 2IC, or even that third person that's going to help lead the team.
And it's quite a morbid conversation, obviously. What happens if you get hit by a bus? But I think given an individual, a business is probably their maybe biggest asset, maybe second to their house, but from a cash flow generating, it's amazing to see how many clients haven't thought about what would happen if they were removed from their business at short notice, isn't it?
Huge, and a lot of people have either been nudged into that decision at the moment, but because of what's happened. I thought you were going to say nudged into the bus lane, but no. But it's what we found is, and especially with the business sales that we're talking about clients with, this is one thing that's really come about, is that the concept that either people don't realise that there's a value to their business that they could actually sell it for. So literally in the last week, I've had 3 examples of people that have told us that they're closing down their business, they're going to go and do something else. And we said, all right, well, do you mind if we have the opportunity to present it to other like-minded businesses that might be interested in your customer base, you know, your web presence, things like that, just components within the business, yeah. And it's actually been, they're like, oh, I didn't realise anyone would see value in it.
They were just going to turn out the lights.
Turn off the lights,
wow.
Lock the doors and walk away. And combination of different reasons around that, whether it's the motivation is just I've had enough and I'm out, like it's whatever it may be, or they've just never thought of it from that valuable perspective as to someone else's perspective on the value of it. I was repeating myself, sorry, but there's also then the more serious approach to it as well, where someone believes that they've got a very valuable business, but then you have the conversation around, all right, well, once you're out of here, who's going to do that role and who's going to do this, and how does that all work together when someone steps in to be able to do that? Or this is your key person that you've got in these roles. What happens if they were to leave you tomorrow through circumstances out of your control? Where's the value in your business? So systems, procedures, making sure that they've got the right facilities in place in their business to be able to do it, and that impacts a lot of the value that's in your business too. So those conversations have been having a lot. There has been a lot more of those conversations happening, especially in the last 6 months. The last sort of 2 years has been people, you know, treading water, getting through it, or it's been good times, or however it has been, depending on their circumstances. But now it's actually all right. We're sort of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. It's time to make some changes.
And I actually think even there might be some folks sitting here thinking about their own business. And one thing is to slow down and slowly turn out the lights. The other side is to, okay, could we package up? And I was listening to Denise's session. Could I package up a certain parcel of my fees? Could I package up the whole business? I know a bunch of firms that run kick-ass payroll businesses, and they sell for a really nice multiple because it's that repetitive work. It's highly process-driven and systemized, and that's where that nice multiple comes from. And this guy, he's CPA, and he loves payroll, which is quite strange for a CPA. But basically, he starts a payroll company, sells it to ADP. Year later, starts another payroll company, 3 years later, builds it up, sells it. And so that's basically been his business model, which has been actually quite impressive. But the reason that he's done it is because of the multiple. He tried to do it in his tax firm, barely 80 cents on the dollar, because it's very intellectual property based versus the repetitive nature of payroll. So there's something.
Absolutely, no, and to sort of piggyback on the back of that as well is, especially with the bookkeeping side of things, is that we are the ones that are talking to the clients, potentially week in, week out. So there is contact that is happening there that the relationships lead on to further opportunities depending on who it is that's interested in the business. So that's been a massive provider within our business, the opportunity that it's had because of the fact that we're talking to our clients when we're doing their payroll, when we're lodging the BASs, just everyday things that we're doing that we've historically has been our bread and butter business. We're actually looking at it completely differently going, no, this is the conversation piece that's building our relationship so that we can do whatever services it is that comes from it from there.
Tish, you don't have, and I'm probably speaking out of turn here, but as the accountant, you may not have the day-to-day sort of relationship with the client. How do you start talking about these things like succession planning? What are your hopes and dreams? What happens if you get hit by a bus? How do you introduce this idea of whether it's financial literacy or the goal, hopes and dreams conversation with your clients and prospective clients?
I think what we've done is we've mapped it out in a timeline because there's a specific point that you want to be having this conversation with clients and then it gets put into a larger plan. But I do actually speak to my clients probably like once or twice a week.
All right.
I do, they call me at all times. And because we also, for some of the clients, manage that bookkeeping component as well, even though that's been done by the bookkeepers, we as a firm still have that contact. So if there's something that's coming through from the bookkeeping side that is more of an accounting or a tax conversation, then they'll always escalate it up to me. And I think that for me is one of the benefits of offering that end-to-end service to my clients because then I have complete visibility. So when we are talking about, let's just talk about your revenue and see what's going on, I don't have to go back and dig into information and drill down to general ledgers because it's already within the firm. So it just makes it a bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like your sort of analogy, but it's a journey. It's where when they come on board as a client, we're going to take them through a structured program, semi-structured program. And I love the term financial literacy, but the idea is we will take you through a process and we're going to talk to you about very specific things, quite process driven, quite systems driven, but at the end of the day, at the end of the year, at the end of 2 years, we will have ticked off these key things, these key milestones, these key parts of the business. How did that process, did that organically develop, or did you sort of sit down and say, you know what, for a business owner, here are all the 17 different things we want to make sure that we cover over the course of our relationship?
I mean, I will say that it is sort of a living document. It's changing as it goes along because needs change. We've learned in the last years the environment changes very, very rapidly. And so you need to change with that. So a lot of it, I guess I relied on my prior experience being a CFO as well as working in external audit. And I had a base process that I developed, but a lot of that sort of evolved over the last 2 years as I was having more and more conversations with people around their business, what are their plans, what are their goals, and how do we get you there? But yeah, I'm sure in the next 2 years, if you ask me the question, I'd be like, yep, it's evolved again, and we've taken some stuff out, put some things back in, because our needs change constantly.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw one firm and basically a very simple Excel spreadsheet, and they had 15 things that they needed to talk to their clients with over the course of 6 months or 12 months, and they just put a check mark against it. And so whenever a client meeting was coming up, they would quickly remind themselves, okay, Trent's coming in. We've already spoken about this. Actually, we haven't talked about cash flow in a while, so let's make sure we talk cash flow, and then we're not necessarily going to solve the cash flow problem today, but we're going to raise it and probably tee up some time. So a really simple Excel spreadsheet. Can't believe I'm recommending Excel spreadsheets for client relationship management, but it's a really easy way in which you can just systemize this value add and relationship with your clients. How do you keep track of it?
I actually use Carbon within my practice.
Yep.
So as a standard process, when I have a client meeting or anyone has a client meeting, they open up a little note in Carbon and date, put in the contact, And as we're going through the meeting, you just jot down what the key points are. And then we keep that pinned to the top of the client timeline. So anyone who is assigned to that client, whether it's accountant, bookkeepers, tax agent, can go in, look at the timeline and say, okay, on the 13th, that's what we discussed at our last meeting. And so those were my action items that I needed to have progressed from then to now. Did we achieve that? And I actually take it a step further and I document the action points, and then Carbon gives you this nifty way of putting it into a client checklist that gets emailed out automatically with automatic reminders to the client if there are deliverables that are due from their side. And I find that that's actually smoothed out the process quite a bit.
Wonderful. Any other Carbon users in one there? Yep. Trent, do you use Carbon or?
No. And
how do you manage the client relationship?
So
stuff?
we don't well.
Right.
To be honest, we've got long-term existing staff. We've got long-term existing clients. So the conversation with new ones, we make sure we're being proactive about it. The clients we've had for a long time, we've been fortunate enough where it's popped up at some time. The last 2 years is we've been forced to go out, or not forced to, but we've proactively gone out to have those conversations, and we developed a lot of materials through the grants that we had in Queensland. Or actually, there was a couple of them. So Townsville got hit by a very large flood in 2019. So the state government rolled out some grants there that was actually allowing businesses to basically pivot or diversify away from their existing business systems that they might have been using so that they could adapt to working from home, business interruptions, whatever it may be. So it was called the Resilience Grant. And then we also had the Adaption Grant, which was basically adopting the digital tools. So whether that's marketing, whether that's accounting, whatever it may be, they were available there to do that as well. So we developed a whole lot of materials for our own use when we were talking with clients that they were in there like that. But it's really quite primitive. Like it was Excel, Word, and things like that. So hearing that Carbon does that, that's actually, I think that's a brilliant idea. And I love that tool. Like that's actually, I've never thought about that, as that making sure that we are asking those questions at the right time. I think that's good to be accountable, because it's not, even though we're having those regular conversations, are we actually having the right conversations in advance of the time when it's suddenly forced upon you? You're already flat out with heaps on, and then all of a sudden someone's coming to you with a drastic change that they need to make.
Yeah, absolutely. And so apps.com, you can find out all the information about Carbon there. I think Richard is upstairs as well. I think the other thing, let's sort of shift gears a little bit. Financial literacy, and how do we get our business clients to better understand what's actually going on in their business? Because for the most part, a lot of business owners are running their business from cash at bank. Yeah. And so basically, it's when something happens, they get hit by that bus, that's when all of a sudden we've got to pivot quite quickly. How do we talk to our clients now about financial literacy? I know you're running a training session on QBO advanced reporting tomorrow, but talk about, and Tish, maybe if you want to kick off on financial literacy, how do you talk to your clients about more than just cash at bank?
What I actually do is I've gone back and I've broken it down to the very, very basic bookkeeping and accounting principles. Because you can't make it overly complicated. These are not people from the profession. They're not going to understand our jargon or terminology. So I've broken it down to a very basic level. And for me, it's simple things like understanding why your bank account doesn't actually reconcile in QuickBooks. Like, there's just one screen you can look at that's going to give you that information in 2 seconds. And then understanding why is it so important for those two balances to be exactly the same. When you break it down to a fundamental level and understand what the issue or ramification of just that one thing is, there's a light bulb moment right there. And they're like, I never thought about it from that perspective. It's taken them fundamentally, for me, just for them to understand that bank reconciliation process. And then at minimum, it's 2 reports they need to look at, profit and loss and balance sheet, because each one is giving you different information about your business. Some clients, yes, they do like to look at the cash view of their business, but then it's just showing them, well, you just need to toggle one little button in QuickBooks and it gives you a cash versus accrual. But even just saying something like accrual, you're like, okay, no, stop there. Let me break down what accrual means. And then we start whiteboarding it and going to, well, this is what it would actually look like. and this is the difference. And then that's another light bulb moment. And what you're actually doing is you getting your client to come on board in taking their bookkeeping seriously, their taking accountability for their financial records. Because whether you're a sole trader or a company, you all have that same accountability to make sure it fairly presents, it's an accurate representation of your business activities. So just getting them to understand those fundamental principles achieves that higher objective of what you're trying to do.
It's an cruel world, isn't it? But I think interesting to your point about. I know, sorry. But I think interesting to your point about something as simple as a bank reconciliation, like things that we take for granted, and accrual versus cash basis. Do clients turn around and be like, Tish, that's what I pay you for?
No, because we go into the training on the understanding that at the end of this training, if you decide that you want to outsource your bookkeeping and your accounting, that's okay. The objective of the training is not to turn you into a bookkeeper or an accountant. The objective of the training is to help you understand what your business activity is from a financial perspective, help you take control. Because one of the things that I do see far too often, and especially it came through, with all the grants and stuff, is that people did not know how to access their software and download something as basic as their profit and loss. Mm-hmm. And so then if you were with a bad bookkeeper or accountant, you got locked in because you didn't have login details to your software, you didn't know how to get your profit and loss, you did not know, you were not empowered enough to make that decision to move away and then action it. So yeah.
Or there's 3 months of transactions that are unreconciled sitting there.
Oh.
And I thought I was paying for real-time accounting, whatever that means. Trent, what about you? Like in terms of that financial literacy element with your clients and really delivering valuable insights into what's happening in business. Do you think your clients, before they came to you, are they getting the most out of the software, or is it really just a monthly year-end activity that they're doing?
Yeah, so this has been a really interesting thing that's happened over the time as well, is that we've been doing a lot more training, trying to sort of instill those just fundamentals. You're not supposed to be a bookkeeper or accountant, but try and understand how it all fits together, so that you don't need to know exactly how or what, but at least you know why, so that it can help with those things from there. And that's specifically what we found with the cloud-based software, has always made it so much easier and faster to be able to do it there in real time, working off the bank feeds, rules, all those sorts of things. Building it together, making sure the reconciliation is correct, of course, but having it set up like that has always been really helpful. The thing that we've also been spending a lot of time in doing is delving into it a little bit more, so that the reports that we're generating is more relevant for the actual business owner, as opposed to our perspective from compliance side and then with the accounting side of it. And the idea of that is we know that we're still creating the same information, but we're putting in different chart of accounts. We're using classes and locations, and we haven't used so much of tags yet. It's still early days for us, but tags is such a powerful tool that's so easy to update as you're doing the bank feeds, that just gives that classification information that's available, that's relevant for the business owner, that they might not understand debits and credits, they might not understand those things, but a particular tag word that's relevant for them in their business, that's what's going to be that sort of light bulb moment, so that they're like, actually, no, I need to make sure that I'm doing this at the right time, or I'm making sure that I'm providing this information to us as the bookkeepers.
And actually, at a bare minimum, I know how to navigate my way around and make sure that I'm able to get in, and if I need to pull out a report for the bank or something like that, I'm not reliant on you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's
because again, a bit of a stupid joke. I always remember that our accountants would say, whenever the clients get involved, they make it a quick mess in QuickBooks. So how do you talk to your clients about, here's what you do, here's what we do? How do you keep them from, because I used to do it myself when I was first learning the bank feed. I would code things wrong, and then I was using Dex and Receipt Bank, and so I'd do something on the bank feed and then submit something through Receipt Bank. How do you strike that balance between the do it yourself and here's what you do, and then you just stay out of this? Trent, maybe
we're always very diplomatic in that approach. By all means, have a go. Let's see how we end up. but then there's a bit of an adjustment once the bills start to come through, and it's, this is how much time it's taken to tidy up and things like that. So having said that though, it's also, and this is sort of referencing where things have come from to where we are now, that being able to go and recode and doing a whole heap of reclassify transactions that's just a game changer in doing those things. So there's no such thing as a bad client. There's no such thing as the it's
No, I actually contend because a lot of consultants are out there. They say get rid of the bottom 20% and fire them and get rid of them. But more often than not, I think we've got to take a look at the mirror and look at ourselves in the mirror. And it's probably a poor onboarding experience. It's probably poor training. Yep. It probably is on us, and we probably let them get away with too much. But I think it really is that first experience, the training, the onboarding, the setting expectations, that financial literacy.
I will say I am not as diplomatic as Trent. It's a conversation that we have in a diplomatic way, but very upfront. I mean, and maybe that's the auditor that comes out in me a little bit. Clearly defined roles and responsibilities. I say it up front. Get them to understand the consequences up front. And really, the other aspect is if a client looks into their file and it's the first or second week of the month and everything's reconciled up until the last month, there's really no need for them to do those 2 weeks because that information is not yet that relevant. So I do find keeping files as up to date as possible stops them from actually going in and saying, because that's what triggers it. It's like, I need this right now. Yeah. My bookkeeper can't do it. My accountant's too busy. I might as well do it myself. But yeah, I establish the boundaries up front and then just try to keep it as up to date as possible.
One thing I saw a firm do very effectively is, and if anyone has questions, just please raise your hand and make this interactive. But what was really interesting was they listed out all of the steps in the bookkeeping process. And there was basically a column. We're doing it, you're doing it. And so they went down in terms of this conversation and checkbox, checkbox, checkbox. Here's what the agreed fee is. And at any time there was any sort of interaction and the client wanted more, the sheet would come out. We can absolutely do that, but I'm going to move this X from your column to my column, which means we're going to have to change the price. But it was really good. What I picked up from that, it really helped manage the expectations. For all intents and purposes, most business owners wouldn't know a good set of books if it hit them over the head. And they don't know what's actually involved in preparing the monthly accounts, preparing the quarterly. So this was a really interesting way of quite blatantly and explicitly defining everything. Well, we want to save a bit of money. Well, that's actually a bit expensive. Can you sharpen your pencil? Well, we can by moving a few of these over into your column. We'll train you, we'll show you how to do it, but this whole scope conversation, it was managed from the get-go, which I thought was really interesting.
I actually include that as part of standard practice, as part of every quote that goes out, is there's a scoping, and it's not a generic scoping, it's something that we've looked at your needs, and we said this is what you need, and then on the side, I document my assumptions, and so when someone says, oh, but you should be doing this, then I pull out that scoping document and I'm like, well, actually, these were the assumptions that you signed off on, so let's have a bigger conversation now.
More than happy to do it,
yeah.
And we can, but there's an investment associated with that. So we've gone on sort of maybe not as focused on business structures and all that type of stuff. I think with about 6 minutes to go, what do you think attendees and people on the virtual stream need to be thinking about, and hopefully they're identifying 1 or 2 clients that they should be having this conversation with on Monday. How do they start that conversation?
That's it's as easy as picking up the phone, I would say. I guess probably go through your client list and see who fits the profile. Of either they're sitting at too much of high risk, or it could just be a case of someone's come to you and said, oh, I just want to keep my business as my side hustle and I'm happy to be a sole trader. And you look at their revenue numbers and you actually realize, actually you've grown quite a bit. You probably need to go into a new structure. So profiling your clients is definitely something. And then from there, I'm a firm believer of a conversation up front rather than an email because the voice or face is always better. So that's how I would pursue it.
How about you, Trent?
Oh, exactly that. Pick up the phone, send the email, organise, have the meeting, and just be clear. We'd like to talk to you about this, and this is why. no business owner is going to be against someone coming to try and talk to them about their business and helping them out. It's not to oversimplify it, but it is a simple conversation, and keeping it targeted about the particular thing that you'd like to discuss with them is going to just open up a much larger conversation.
And I think that the conversation, not to oversimplify it, could be as simple as, I was at this amazing conference last week, and it had me really thinking about our own business, and it made me realize, haven't checked in with you just to see how you are, how's business going, and should we tee up a time or schedule 30 minutes or an hour or whatever it is. So again, I don't overcomplicate it, and I agree. I think none of your clients will be like, what the hell's Tish calling for? And I think they're screaming out for someone to help them think through these things. And the lovely thing about it is when you start this conversation, you can just say, that's a really good idea. Let's put some time in the calendar next month, or let's put some time in the calendar next week to dig into this in more detail. And I think that's a really important part of it as well, is to manage their expectations and then schedule these activities out. Questions? Anything from any? Yes,
just
Danny.
A question for Trent. I don't know if I heard correctly about your business structure. I was just curious. Baz was your bread and butter. You're doing real estate. I think you said you're doing mortgage lending.
Yes.
And you're not a tax agent.
No.
There's only 8 of you there.
Yes.
And you're doing all this advising. So you're doing it. How do you relate to the tax agent or the accountant? And then also just the skills to do all that. I think that's.
We joke.
Only 8 persons.
Oh, it is, and it's not a huge component of our business. It's only very new, especially with the real estate side of things. But finance is a complementary thing. It's my background. It's what I've been comfortable with. So
you have a mortgage, a license to a mortgage
through my aggregator, yeah. So
someone's got a real estate license as well. All in the.
Jack of all trades.
got a couple of hats, but
All under the one.
yeah.
That's fantastic.
Actually, his name's not Trent, it's Jack of all trades.
It actually is a little bit of a weakness. We were talking about strengths in a different session, and it is a weakness because I have found that I am spreading myself too thin, and we're finding that there's those gaps where it's actually, I'd love to be out there doing everything for everyone, but we do need to clone myself to be having these properly having these conversations as opposed to being reactionary around it. And that's what, over the last 2 years, that's what we've found, is that our clients want to hear from us, that they're never annoyed at us talking to them about their business.
Other questions for the panel, for the group? Right, well, I think we might conclude there. Trent, Tish, thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to learn more about you and your businesses and you as individuals and what drives you and everything as we've been preparing for this panel. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much for imparting some wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, Trent and Tish.
Now I have to unpunch myself.
Thank you very much, Damien, Tish, and Trent. There will now be a 15-minute break to allow you to move to the final session of your choice. For those in the room, on the screen now, you'll be able to see what's coming up next. Those tuning in from home, please head back to the homepage and select which session you'll want to watch. You'll hear a bell, an announcement letting you know that the next session is about to start. Next up in this room, we'll have Marketing Best Practices, sponsored by MailChimp. So feel free to stay in the room. See you in 15 minutes.
I just wanna go back home and be alone in my bed. I just wanna get it done so it don't get to my head. Icing on the cake, icing on the egg, just like he said. I just wanna go home. I've been down, I've been up. I don't care if it gets messed up. How are you? How you been? Did you hear about anything? The sun shines half the time. What are you gonna wear tonight? I'm okay, I'm alright. I don't know if I heard you right. I just wanna go back home and be alone in my bed. I just wanna get it done so it don't get to my head. Icing on the cake,